Welcome, everybody, to the Unstoppable Podcast. I'm Ralph Graves Jr. So glad to have you guys here. My guest today is Jennifer Wallace. She has a very unique story. She does some very unique things. I'm going to let her tell you about her so she can do it better than I can. Jennifer, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Ralph. Thank you so much. I'm just honored and thrilled to be here with you today and to just see what happens, see where the conversation takes us, and just see how it all goes. I'm honored, thrilled.
I'm glad to have you here. You have such an amazing story. Tell my audience what you do.
Well, I'm a guide in the healing arts, as I like to say. I facilitate under Elizabeth Kristoff with Brain-Based Wellness, who I think your listeners are already have been introduced to.
Yeah.
And then I also host a podcast called Illuminated with Jennifer Wallace, where each week an expert lady shows up to share her story, which often has an underlying theme of resilience through trauma. And we share brave stories, groundbreaking wellness, and it's just my greatest belief in healing, and that healing is possible and change is possible, and that if you don't resonate with the work that I do, then I want to share another practitioner with you that helps you step into your full potential, your full power, whatever you are called to do.
I believe that healing, so many of us are walking around, whether we're hurt mentally, whether we're dealing with physical injury, and we think, well, I'm going to live with this pain the rest of my life. And we don't have to. I think the human body and the mind, I believe that God designed it to heal itself. And if we provide the right environments, if we do the right, the body is trying to heal itself. Am I saying that we'll live forever? No. But what I'm saying is your quality of life can be pretty strong, until it's ready to transition. So tell us a little bit about your story. Because this podcast is about being unstoppable, and you are truly unstoppable. So tell them a little bit about you, your personal story, and then we'll lead into how you got into what we're doing today.
Okay. And I want to say I completely agree with you. I believe that divine wisdom and ancient wisdom lives within our bodies, and our bodies do know how to heal. At 32, I was traveling. I had lived in London, going to school there for a fine arts degree, and I was spending some time in Turkey, and I was taken and held captive for several hours. I escaped from Turkey with bruises, but in that scenario, I stabbed my captor with a small pair of scissors. It was not as successful as I had imagined it in that moment. And he pulled a 9-inch carving knife out on me, and he was wielding it above me like Psycho, right? Okay. And you can see that knife holding vision. And it was in that moment that I can only describe as divine intervention, because I felt a force come in between me and him as we were standing eye to eye. And in a moment where seconds before I said, "This is it, you tried everything, and now this is the end, you're going to die." It was like, it's a giant force of divinity. I don't know how else to describe it, but then it was a very quick shift in my thinking saying, no, this is not the end for you. You will go on.
Yeah.
And so I did. The man who delivered me to that house came back and took me out. And then 5 years later, I developed stage 3 HER2 positive breast cancer. I found a 9-centimeter tumor in my right breast one night. I was 37 years old, and it was a very ugly diagnosis, but I do have a lot of faith. I do believe in the body's ability to heal. And I really put so much energy into my thoughts, into my faith. And I did follow the Western treatment protocol, but that stopped at some point because what they had envisioned for me, what they had written out for me, I didn't actually follow through with completely. I was supposed to have a double mastectomy after 6 rounds of chemo, but I did so much work in congruence with the Western medicine that they couldn't even find any cancer in my body after 6 chemo treatments. It was completely gone. No tumor showed up in imaging. And it wasn't until last year, just through a lot of like work and diving deep, that I found out that I had repressed memories of childhood sexual abuse from the ages of 3 to 5. So I've been navigating that for not quite a year now, but more like maybe about 7 or 8 months, and just trying to work through that.
All right. So let me take this from the top. I'm ex-law enforcement, right? So I hope you guys did hear it. This is a truly unstoppable woman. She was taken in Turkey as a student. I guess we could send a whole podcast on how that even happened. Like somebody just swooped down and pushed you in the van. Is that how it happened?
No, I had made friends with, I was living with one of my friend's cousins, and she didn't speak great English. And she took me to meet someone who would help us with the conversations when we were not sort of seeing eye to eye. And I thought that I was making a friend in that person because we were roughly the same age, and he spoke great English. And one day he just said to me, "There's someone I would like to introduce you to. She's your age. She's Russian. She speaks great English, and you could make a friend."
Wow. So
he took me to that house, and that was not what happened.
Right. But he came back and got you. He came back and he had to change your heart.
The man that I stabbed, and he ended up calling him to take me back out of that house. And I think that just goes along with that divine intervention. Yeah. You know, I think it was like part of that divine narrative that I really can't really answer to. So I don't know why he came back to get me.
You survived that. First of all, you stabbed somebody. And let me tell you about stabbing somebody. That's up close and personal. When you stab somebody, and I've done a lot of shooting. I've never stabbed anybody. I often said stabbing somebody is I'm committed to the violence, because this is a hand-to-hand combat situation, you know, but I guess you do that, you know.
Well, back in the day when I was young and watching Oprah, you know, she used to have John Walsh on there, and they always said, "Don't go to the second location." And that was only thing going through my mind. Like, I sort of know where I am right now, but if they take me somewhere else, I might not get out of here. And I could only think of Oprah and John Walsh so many times in that lived experience.
Wow. You survived that. I hope you guys are listening. Don't go to the second location. Don't go to the first location, if you ask me. But don't even, if you just lapse in judgment, end up at the first location, don't go to the second. So you survived that. I think that's truly amazing. You're in Turkey. Most people can't survive that in Philadelphia. You survived that in Turkey. Mm-hmm. You know, so when I'm saying Philly, I'm not saying Philly's bad. Shout out to Philadelphia. Love Philadelphia. I'm just saying locally. Okay. So most people can't survive that. And so you survive that. You probably got some post-traumatic stress about that. You come home, you're living your life, get it diagnosed with breast cancer. And I like what you said. You followed the Western medicine protocol along with some other things, alongside of some other things that you've learned, and so all of it's gone. Because a lot of people will say, "Well, I'm not doing the Western protocol, and I'm just going to do it this way." But sometimes you got to work in conjunction with some things.
Yeah. When I got the diagnosis, it was in October of 2014, and I didn't have any health insurance. And so I was sitting with the 5th oncologist / breast specialist I had met with, and no one had really sold me on the treatment. I had read several books before about people that had cured their own cancer or maybe even lived with it. And I was completely willing to do that. So I was trying to convince the oncologist, like, hey, just give me a couple of months. Let me see what I can do. I can change my lifestyle. I can do all these things. I had this whole speech.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, I love that energy. I appreciate what you're saying, but you don't have that type of cancer and you'll be dead by January.
Wow. Wow. And we're talking today. How many years ago was that?
That was October of 2014. I finished treatment at the start of 2016. Yes.
I always say that there's another report. I don't care about now, what if your mind, and we're going to go deeper a little bit. What if your mind accepted that report? You just accepted what he said. You know what? You would have been dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you just accepted it. If you just went home, started crying, and accepted it. And so I hope you listeners are understanding that you don't have to accept every report that somebody gives to you. I don't care what they have behind their name. I don't care. That's what your report says. That's great. But I believe there's another report.
I do too. And also too, I was, like I said, sitting with the fifth specialist. Yeah. And it took me up to 5 to even find, number one, he spoke the truth to me. It was the first doctor that did that. But I believe when you're faced with any big decision, like find your team, find the people that speak to you. You don't have to go with that first doctor just because it's a doctor.
Yeah, I just read that.
Shop around.
I just read that from one of my mentors' book, Les Brown, mentor of mine. He just talked about finding your team. Once you are going through something, he's a cancer survivor. You hit the nail on the head, Jennifer. Find your team. Find your squad. You don't have to get your people. You don't have to settle for the first one that comes your way. Nope. Find your people. So we're talking about being unstoppable. This lady is truly unstoppable. She survived that. She survived the cancer. What are you learning now? Now, I know you're into the brain-based wellness. We're going to talk about that. But in your personal life, you mentioned something about some stress or some post-traumatic stress from some suppressed childhood memories. How are you dealing and how are you surviving through that? What are you doing with that? What are you learning now?
Well, there's a great TED Talk by a lady named Nadine Burke-Harris, and she talks about ACE scores, adverse childhood experiences, and how those experiences, depending on how many, and it's a score of 10 is the ultimate score you can get. But the more of those points that you get, the further, the more times that you have to experience a chronic illness or dis-ease in the body later on. So if you have, say, a score of 4, you're like 4 times likely to have a pulmonary disorder. And we know heart disorders, heart diseases are the biggest thing in our community.
Biggest killer. The biggest heart disease is still the number one killer in the United States of America, period.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people, if you can trace that back to your childhood and see what lives under there, is that part of it. And what I'm learning now is the more that I can regulate my system through the applied neurology and really create safety in my body, that is the number one thing for me to always really be working on, is to create safety in the body. And I think that a lot of us don't feel safe in our bodies, whether we're talking to women of color and men of color. Our entire system is based on lack and scarcity. And we're living in a lot of fear right now. There's a collective state of fear that we're living in. And so for me, it's about lowering the stress, because I do believe, I used to think that the breast cancer, because it was HER2 positive, and HER2 is a protein gene that we carry in our hearts, and mine went mutant out of a toxic environment. Okay. Now, when I first heard that, I thought, okay, that's the fillings in your teeth, the mercury fillings in your teeth. That's deodorant. That's shampoo. That's whatever you're putting in your skin. Like, that's what you're eating. Yeah. But what I know now is that it is likely the stress caused by, number one, the childhood experience.
Uh-huh.
And then secondly, from being in Turkey, I mean, you said it, what a state of PTSD could I possibly be living in? I mean, I was scared of everything. Every person was a threat. Every man that looked at me, I could just, like a wildfire, I could create all these different scenarios. And we know that we all have experiences that you can think of right now that you will get that cascade of flushing stress hormones going through your body. You can replay that scenario, that situation, all those feelings. And those are the feelings of chronic stress that I believe led ultimately to the cancer.
And so we don't pay attention to that as Americans, and we should. If you're listening to the podcast, we've talked about it before. We have to be careful what we watch, what we listen to, what we allow. So many people were sick because of COVID-19 that never got COVID-19 just because of the stress of walking around fearful of COVID-19. And we don't understand that can happen. We don't understand that can happen. I used to think that, and I mentioned this on my podcast before, I used to wonder why Black Americans led the world in everything. Why are we have the highest blood pressure? Why do we have the highest heart disease? Then it dawned on me, the stress that we live under in this country, is a breeding ground for all of that.
It's true. I mean, from a nervous system perspective, you're never relaxing.
Never.
You're constantly in a state of hypervigilance, aware of your surroundings, not feeling safe in your body, in an environment. And it's a lot to undertake. Okay.
So we know that this exists. You help us deal with it. Now, that's not going to change anytime soon. My grandchildren live under it. My granddaughter, my grandsons, my kids. So how do we bring our bodies to that feeling of safety, to lowering those, is it cortisol? Am I saying cortisol?
Yeah.
I'm learning.
You're
How do I get to that state of lowering my cortisol levels? So maybe I'm not producing that cancer. When I talk about this, people are like, wow, so your body can produce the cancer from being under stress for so long. So I don't produce. Your mind can. And so how do we, and this is a strategy and a tool that we must learn. We must learn. What's the first step in learning that? What do you like? What do we do?
Well, I think number one, we really have to think about the subconscious mind from a really foundational place. And knowing that when we talk about the subconscious mind, we are talking about below the level of your conscious awareness, right? We're talking about your heart rate, your respiration. This is your autonomic nervous system. These are the automatic systems in your body. Well, your subconscious mind is responsible for 80% of your lived experience in this world. So apart from setting the physiological states of the body, your lived experience is how you interact with the world, the behaviors that that are outputs, and then how the world around you is created. And we have to get down into that subconscious level to see what patterns am I running, what patterns are creating those behaviors, and what patterns are creating those beliefs. And then we've got to start rewiring those beliefs, thinking about the fears that come with that, and then just reprogramming the subconscious mind. And it does take some work, takes a lot of awareness. And like I said, the number one thing that we do at Brain-Based Wellness to start is by creating safety in the body. By bringing you into your body and feeling safe.
Now that sounds like a lot of work. What can my listeners do for 10 minutes today? 15 minutes today?
For 10 minutes today, even 5 minutes today, there's something called straw breathing. And it is scientifically proven that if you do 6 breaths, slowly in through the nose and then pursing your lips like a straw to breathe out, making that exhale slightly longer than your inhale, that that improves the physiological state of the body, right? We want to get out of that fight and flight response, right? Where everything is racing. We want to get into that parasympathetic state, that rest and digest. Sure. And another thing that you can do is tongue circles, where you're scraping the mouth.
Yeah. So how often during the day? Is it something I do at night, something before I go to bed, like the straw breathing? Do I do it? How many times throughout the day does one need? It's like that woosah. Remember that in Bad Boys? I think Mark Lawrence was like woosah moment.
Yeah.
How often during the course of the day would one, this is just beginning, how often do you suggest we do something like that?
I think that all depends on you as an individual. I like to do a certain set of drills in the morning when I wake up. It just kind of starts my day before I go on a walk. But also at any time during the day when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're feeling fatigued, when the stress is getting too much, like just take 5 minutes to yourself. And a lot of times people say, oh, I don't really have time. I don't have time. But when you think about 3 to 5 minutes in a 24-hour span of time, you do have the time, you can handle it, and you will set yourself up for better success no matter what it is you've got next. If you're going into a big meeting, if you've got a proposal to submit, if you've got a date, whatever it is.
You have time. Yeah.
You have time. And you owe it to yourself. You're the most important thing here. And whether or not you've got a family or a spouse or whoever it is that has expectations, or you have your own expectations to show up for, show up for yourself first so that you can show up better in the world.
Now, beyond the brain-based wellness and beyond what you're doing now, speak to somebody who may have survived or just has to make a shift in their lives. What advice would you give my listeners today? Young woman, young man, whoever, who's just, I know that I'm living below my potential. I'm living a life of average and I'm better than average. How would Jennifer get them? What would you say to them to have them make that shift?
I always like to remind people that you are divine. You are divine consciousness. You have been put here for some reason, for something, that the divine lives within you and is a reflection of you, and that God lives through you. Yeah. So change is possible. Anything is possible. Whether you want to be something, do something, have something, it's all possible. Anything can change at any second. And you have a certain level of control over that based on the way that you think, behave, and believe.
Yeah.
And I will support you in any way that I possibly can.
And what's the name of your company again? What's the name?
Illuminated.
Illuminated. How can they reach to you? How can they get to you? Tell us how to get to Illuminated.
Well, I'm Illuminated with Jennifer on Instagram and on Facebook. My website is Illuminated with Jennifer Wallace, and my email is illuminatedwithjennifer@gmail.com. So I'm across the board. If you just Google Illuminated with Jennifer, you should find me, the podcast or something. Anyway.
Illuminated with Jennifer. Jennifer, you're doing a great work. You're doing a fantastic work. Just really supporting and really encouraging people into the areas of healing. And it could start, ladies and gentlemen, with just a few moments a day, even with the straw breathing. It will have to go deeper than that. You may have some suppressed childhood memories. You may be getting over something that happened in high school or something that happened last week, but you can heal from it.
Mm-hmm. You can.
From it. I read a book. Go ahead. What's that?
I'm sorry. Yeah. And I think it's important to remember too, that you're not alone.
Yeah.
We all have very similar shared experiences. So let's connect in a community like you're building right here. Like, let's just keep connecting. Let's reach out because we share this.
You know what I want to talk to you about? And I know I want to talk to you about. I am trying to find out, or I'm trying to investigate what drives certain behaviors that I have. Mm-hmm. Why do I crave cupcakes?
Well,
I'm being honest. I'm just trying to what happens that generates that. And I'm a gym rat. I stay in the gym. But what is it that what behavior generates an appetite that doesn't allow me to get the eating just right?
Well, let me ask you a question.
What's that?
When you think of eating a cupcake, what emotions does that make you feel?
I just like the sweetness sometimes. I don't know. I always have a cupcake and a cup of coffee.
Can you relate that having a cupcake to a positive memory? Like a positive childhood experience? What do cupcakes bring you?
Joy.
Exactly. Okay. So I have this very shared craving. So when you think of that cupcake holding the joy for you, okay, so then you start having this craving for a cupcake. Yeah. Are you actually craving a cupcake, or are you craving joy? A joyful connection, a joyful experience. And then can you shift? Instead of grabbing that cupcake, can you phone a friend? Can you go hang out with your kids? Can you hang out with your grandkids and seek the same joy from an experience that you're actually going to get joy from than from a craving?
Do you know how sweet that cupcake is?
Yes, I do. I love that cupcake.
that is hard to replace, my friend. But no, I get it. You know, and so I'm really diving into that. And you're absolutely right. Often when I talk about habits, I'm like, you can't say no without filling it with a yes. And so, but I never looked at it as what that cupcake represented, or what I never tied it to a childhood experience.
Cravings also often have a positive experience attached to them. It's something that we dive into in the Food Freedom Program in Brain-Based Wellness, is what's the difference between a craving and emotional eating. Okay. Right. Because those carry really different emotional experiences in the body.
Yeah. I don't think mine's emotional. I think mine's more of a craving.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's me too. For me, I crave ice cream cookie sandwiches.
I love them. And you know what?
I love them.
I associate those with my father. And my father just passed in November. Mm-hmm. I was on the beach the other day, and I don't know, the ice cream man was walking down the beach. And I remember the ice cream man, my dad would always get an ice cream sandwich. Now, I didn't get one yesterday. Probably I was too occupied looking at my grandkids, but I really wanted one. I even said out loud, I should get an ice cream sandwich. Mm-hmm. I didn't need it. Wasn't hungry. I just, ice cream sandwich.
And deep down, so for me, it's my mom. And then that joy and connection. So deep down on a subconscious level, you saw that ice cream man, and a memory triggered of a positive experience that you share with your dad. And then boom, you want the ice cream.
I think the Tasty Cake Crimpets is the same thing for me. Mm-hmm. That's the little cupcake. I don't know I think it's regional. I don't know if you guys got Tasty Cake. You out in Texas?
Yeah, I'm out in Texas.
I don't think you got Tasty Cake in Texas. It's a regional Philadelphia thing. But
when I could head up back to Virginia to visit my family, I'm going to see if I can get it up there.
Don't listen. No. Replace the joy that Tasty Cake would bring you with something else. Replace it with something else to get that. But I'm really, and I'm glad I'm talking to you. I just downloaded a book, and I haven't listened to it yet, but I'm going to listen to it while I do what I do around here, by last name Sapolsky. Have you heard of him?
I don't think so. What's the name of the book?
I'll tell you right now. I'm going to look on my phone because I can do that. This is my podcast, right? Download it on my phone from, I don't want to say what company until they start paying either me or you, but it's called, the name of the book is called Behave by Robert Sapolsky. There we go. Okay. By Robert Sapolsky. It's called Behave. Now, evidently, he wrote a lot of books, and just a little background on it. Kind of described it a little bit. It just talked about, all of our behaviors are driven by something. We have to stop saying, I have to stop doing this, and find out what is driving us to do that. Mm-hmm, and dig into that.
Yeah, I think sometimes too, when we set those really hard lines, like I'm not going to do that anymore, or I have to, when you are setting yourself up for, and it's kind of happens in the self-help world, it's those extraordinary feelings of like willpower, right? And goal achievement. And sometimes it's really just, it's not about that. It's about the pattern that exists in your subconscious mind.
Yeah.
We got to figure out what that is, and we got to just reprogram it. Like anything, we can repattern a pattern that exists.
Can be repatterned. It can. I don't care how old you are. I don't care I'll say it all the time. If you have breath in your lungs, you still have purpose in this life. And so that's why, hey, listen, we might get the doctor's report, we might get a negative report, but that's not a death sentence. That's something that we ought to work through and let it catapult us and be even a bigger part of our story, a bigger part of our lives to help the next man or woman through. Jennifer, I really enjoyed talking to you today. She's Jennifer at Illuminate with Jennifer, right?
Yes, Illuminated with a D.
Illuminated with Jennifer. Follow her on Instagram. Follow her on Facebook. Do you have LinkedIn and all that stuff?
Yes, I love LinkedIn.
That's my favorite.
It's my favorite too.
It really is. It really is my favorite. I try to post 2 and 3 times a week, maybe 2 and 3 times a day on there. I love it. Yep. But guys, you can find her anywhere. Any final thoughts for the audience, Jennifer?
If you are suffering from anxiety or depression or anything out there, any signal that you are looking at as something that's negative, don't. Look at that as a signal for something positive. That is your brain trying to keep you alive in the only way that it knows how. And we can lower those threats. You can change anything. You can be anything. You can do anything. So just find us and please connect with me. I love to connect with people. So I would love to hear from anyone in the audience.
And Jennifer, will you come back again? Can I call you back?
Anytime. I would love that so much. I really enjoyed this.
I appreciate you saying that. Guys, you've listened to Unstoppable Program, Ralph Graves Jr. Guys, go to my website, ralph@ralphgravesjr.com. Join the Unstoppable community. Be a part of that. And let's be unstoppable together. Until next time, guys, be unstoppable. I'll see you.